Yeah, thank you, Susan. So today's sessions we will focus mostly with a RDC meetup. But before we do that, I'll run through a few couple of things before we do the Ask Me Anything sessions. So for all the innovators, just a reminder, welcome to week 10. So before we start, we'd like to acknowledge the country. Just give me a second. Beck is joining. Yeah. So this session is recorded. Today we do have two wonderful external advisors coming in from the CRDC. So please note that avoiding sharing sensitive informations if that things. So as a reminder, and also if you can turn your camera on, that would be much appreciated. We want this to be as open and collaborative and friendly as possible. Okay, so we are at week 10 for RDC Ask Me Anything session. So I will cover a few things around the logistics before we head into the Cotton RDC Ask Me Anything. So this is where we're at. So for people who know, we have the usual meetups today and then your VB11s. Just a reminder that we do have the pitch practice for this Friday as well. And this is part of our top 12 assessment. So please work with your VBs as you start, I still continue updating your pitch for assessment purposes. For next week, we will announce the top 12 and you are heading to, for the top 12, so we're heading to the pitch bootcamps. And we'll provide more details as we coming up. As I mentioned, it will focus on pitch, but as well as the commercialization plan that we have shared last week. If you haven't seen the copy of the template, please check the venture portal. You will find the commercialization plan under template tab. But if you have any questions, also ask your BB. This is your last opportunity for the top 12 assessments. As I mentioned, the groups will be shuffled. We will include people that is known from Beanstalk. For external advisors, you will get a meeting invite, the new ones in the coming days. Please remember, for this one and for assessment purpose, we do want to target for 8 minutes. So if some of you are struggling to cut it back, so probably work on the time limit for this week. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to hand over for the Cotton RDC MA. The way we would like to start is Susan and Nick, if you could introduce yourself, and I will then hand it to Innovator for introductions. So I'll stop sharing for now. Susan, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. No worries. Hi, everyone. So my name's Susan Mass. So I'm an innovation broker with the Cotton Research and Development Corporation. I'm based in Emerald in Central Queensland. So a little bit on my background. I was before this role, I was in cotton extension. So a little bit of natural resource management extension and a little bit of more agronomy focused farming systems extension for the cotton industry. A little bit about CRDC. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the RDCs. I'm assuming you probably are, given you're here. CRDC is CRDC is a so we invest in research and development and innovation on behalf of the Australian cotton industry and the federal government. So growers pay a research levy, and that's matched by the federal government, and our role is to really bring value to the industry through that investment. So my portfolios that I've been around for a little while, so I've kind of had a little bit of a dabble in all of CRDC's portfolios, but my particular, I guess, focus areas now is really around farming systems, and I've got particular focus on our Northern Australia kind of portfolio. So that's kind of a new and emerging region for the Australian cotton industry, and biosecurity. And I've always been pretty passionate about crop protection issues. So, and I will throw to Nick. I'm probably the oldest, or I'm the oldest innovation broker in the team to the baby in the team. So Nick, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Susan, and hi, everyone. My name's Nick. I am relatively new to CRDC, joining in October last year. My background is in more the commercialization side of things, so sort of research management and making sure that our research aligns with what's going to be strong from a commercial aspect. Prior to, in CRDC, I work primarily on circular economy in that portfolio, and also do our weeds and fibre quality portfolio as well. Prior to CRDC, I used to work with Anna actually at CSIRO, and so I've got knowledge across the food space as well as the animal feed space, working before that in an animal feed company. So the food and feed space is my easy go-to, but certainly figuring out where cotton fits into that circular economy side, and putting the pictures together of how our investments sit to make most use of that circular economy and fit in with that sort of national circular economy framework as well.
Awesome. Thank you both. And Susan, where are you based? I missed that a little bit. Emerald? Is that where you're
Emerald
based?
in central Queensland. So
Lovely. Yeah, beautiful town. And Nick, you're in Brisbane. Yeah.
Brisbane, yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so I'll pass on to the innovators. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, you have a minute and put your virtual hands up if you want to do that. Okay, JD, here you go.
Hello everyone, I'm JD Nick, currently based in Darwin, Charles Darwin University. So our group are working on cotton and nut, and our background is crop protection, working on nematodes. So I met Susan several times on the field day and conference. Yeah, and Nick, last week we got a meeting. So currently one of our team's project I joined to this one is some recipe. We use the cotton gin trash waste to grow the high valued exotic mushroom substrate, but we do have extended proposal to working on is using the used mushroom substrates to do some develop some biolimiticide to use a fungi grow in this substrate to kill the nematodes, which is important pest for cotton as well. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, JD.
Thank you.
I can go next if that's fine.
Yep. Do you have your video on, Anne?
Oh, I'm so sorry, but I'm driving right now because I just met someone earlier for
Okay.
one of our project. But yeah.
Okay.
Hi guys. Sorry, I couldn't put my camera on, but my name is Van. Similar to thing earlier, we also use fungi as well. But the thing is that we turn crop waste, a lot of like green waste, into biomaterial using fungi. So you guys probably heard of like the mycelium material before. That's what we exactly is doing, and we are very interested in using like cotton gin trash and turn them into the material. That's why we really hope today to learn like the logistics side, how farmer is like disposing the trash, and also it's like in what way could we establish that connection with like the Queensland cotton farmer, because we're based in Brisbane at the moment right now.
Awesome, man. Thank you. And I can see Ryan join. Yeah. Megan, do you want to go next? Yep.
Yes, thank you so much, Anna. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet Susan and Nick here. I'm Negin Shariati. I'm an associate professor at UTS, and also I'm a founding director of MaxWeb Technology. We're developing sensing technologies and connectivity solutions for smart farms. This is mainly to enhance irrigation, reduce water waste, and also measure nutrition values in the soil, like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. On the connectivity side, we're developing our own modules, hardware and software for sensor data collection and also data analytics as well. We capture data from existing sensors like off-the-shelf sensors or our own developed sensors. We collect them, process them, analyze them, and send them to the cloud. And we do machine learning and data analytics to create meaningful information. Both parts has lots of innovations. In terms of technology development, And we've done market analysis to make sure all features are better than technologies in the market.
Thank you, Megan. And Beck, can you hear us? Looks like, yep, Beck, you have your hands up. Wonderful. And can you unmute?
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Sorry, I've just pulled over. I am, again, also driving like Van. Sorry, I'm taking my son to an appointment. Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Beck. I'm the MD of ResonAg, and we are basically trying to bring the MRI technology, magnetic resonance, into agriculture. And what we think, or what we hope, and what our questions will be around today, is whether plant available water, like a direct measurement of plant available water or plant available water capacity, is something that would be useful to the cotton industry. So our questions will be more around that sort of thing. But thanks for having us. And sorry, I haven't got my camera on, and sorry I won't be very sort of active during the call, but I'm loving listening to whatever's going on. So thanks.
Thank you, Beck. But last but not least, the two co-founders from Scan Farming, who would like to give an introduction. I can't hear you. It's you're unmuted, but looks like your speaker. Yeah, can anybody hear?
Hold on. How about now? Is that fixed it?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Yep. I think Ryan's having some connectivity issues. He's out in a low reception area at the moment, so I'll take it for him. I'm Lachlan Ross from Scan Farming. We're based in Perth, and we're a grains-based startup. We're trying to improve the efficiency and create a help system for operators driving around on the paddocks during harvest, seeding, and all of their yearly operations. And we kind of give them an interactive map where they can see with all of the other operators where people are doing, what they're up to, and provide them some guidance on how to get around the farm and the work that they are doing.
Wonderful. Short and sharp. Thank you. Okay. So let's open for the Ask Me Anything session. So as we suggested, if you have question particularly, as you mentioned, please put your hands up and then you can ask questions. We'd like to rotate, so try to keep your question for one for now, and then we will go through around the tables. So Beck, you still have your hands up. I'm going to give you this as, as a sign you'd like to ask the question first. If you want to unmute as well.
Sorry,
yeah,
I'd love to, but no, I would love to, but I'm probably not going to ask any. Yeah, sorry, I've got a toddler that's screaming at me in the back. So if you don't mind, Anna, I did send some questions to you. Would it be possible to field one of mine for me? I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I do have questions from Beck, so I'd like to ask on behalf of her. So first question from her was, how could a grower change their operation to improve water usage and yield if PAWC measurements were readily available at a close spacing across growing area? Looks like a very technical specific ones. But Susan and Nick, is that something you can provide some inputs?
Yeah, so I can have a crack and then maybe Nick, you can jump in. And perhaps this is where I kind of go, I know lots about little things, but I'm also going to kind of be like, and here are some resources where we can perhaps provide some information. So can I just start like a little bit about cotton just to kind of help you, just to let's talk about cotton and then I can drill it back because I can see there's some grains people, there's some people. So if I just do a little bit about cotton and Beck, I'll send you some resources in case the toddler, I have done that in the past, and I'll send you some resources as well. So essentially, so I guess one way to think about cotton, and this is my pitch to you guys, why work with cotton? We're the kind of the crossover between horticulture and grain. So essentially, we're talking about broadacre agriculture. So we're talking about broadacre economics, but the gross margins are sort of slightly better than some of the grains crops, similar to some grain crops, but kind of, but what we're essentially doing is growing a fruit tree. So we've got a perennial tree that we're growing annually. So we talk about fruit, we talk about flowering, those sorts of things. So we're growing a tree, and we're kind of taking what is a desert plant. It's also a tropical plant. There's native gossypiums up in Northern Australia, and we're growing it annually. So that's, I guess, a really quick. If you need information on gross margins, I can put some resources there to kind of give you an idea of, like, obviously, as you're trying to work out value propositions, that's important. So in Australia, the majority of the crop is grown kind of through New South Wales and kind of from central Queensland down. Generally, we're looking on the kind of heavy clay soils so that you've got kind of a big bucket, so water holding capacity is important. But we, like I said, we've got some emerging areas as well, sort of Northern Australia. That's a little bit about where we are. That's a little bit about what we're growing. So the cotton season, and I guess I'm going to talk to sort of that northern New South Wales area. Typically, we're growing a summer crop. So we're planting September, October. Where I live, we go August because we're a bit different. But you know, sort of planting cottonseed in sort of September, October, growing through the summer. So we've got a sort of a flowering period. Cotton likes to have, so it needs moisture, but not too much. Doesn't like waterlogging. Needs moisture, loves lots of radiation. So that's why you kind of, you know, Moree, that wider kind of area, perfect, because you've got beautiful radiation, hot, but not too hot. Mostly too hot can be a problem. Kind of that good, like, radiation's really, like, that's where we're farming. We've got little solar radiation plants. So then we're looking at picking. We just like to be different, not talk about harvesting, we're talking about picking. Again, depends on the season and those sorts of things, but into autumn. So depending on like where you are specifically, somewhere from sort of April-ish through to kind of June. So that's just to give you an idea of the cotton season. The cotton's then taken from the farm and ginned. So I guess for the people who are post-farm gate, that ginning is in sort of usually the local regions. Unlike, I guess, sugar, I don't know if you're having interactions with other RDCs, unlike sugar where you're a bit tied to your local mill in terms of sales, you can essentially, with cotton, you have a ginning kind of contract, but you don't necessarily have to sell your cotton to them. You know, cotton is traded on the world market, so you have merchants, and so that kind of provides opportunities for people to do things like forward sell and those sorts of things. So that's just a really but just to kind of put some baseline context. So if we talk about water and irrigation and dryland cotton, so there's a proportion of the industry, and obviously it goes up and down. That's what we would call rain grown. So understanding your soil moisture at planting can be really important. So that would be no different to any other kind of rain grown crop. You're sort of making decisions. Do I have enough moisture to kind of manage the risk? You know, am I likely to get rainfall? Those sorts of things. And then there's I guess the proportion of the industry that's irrigated. And so you're making, you know, as a grower, you're making a decision about whether or not you can or can't plant an irrigated, like whether you should commit to irrigation, whether on, you know, on the amount of allocation you have. So that's kind of a decision-making kind of component that's coming in at the start of the season of how much cotton I can grow, and then making irrigation decisions throughout the year around timing and those sorts of things. There's a lot of technology we're already using in cotton for irrigation. So I guess to get to the question of can you manage if you've got better information about sort of, I guess, how much moisture you have, how much, so essentially how much you plant is part of a decision, but also then your row spacing. So in a rain grown system, so most of the industry is on 1 meter spacing. But if you're in a drier area or you've got limited irrigation and you want to maximize, I guess, the amount of moisture you have, you might go to a skip row. Then for irrigated crops, most of it's furrow irrigation. So if we're still sort of throwing those siphons, it's very energy efficient to get a human to throw siphons, but we have seen a move to what we call bankless That's sort of a system that we got from the rice industry around Griffith, really. So we've sort of got bankless, and that's enabling automation, because then you're essentially opening, what are the things? Gates. And so we're moving to automation, so better information. So things like we've got canopy temperatures and those sorts of things, like technologies then enabling automation. And there's a few people who have managed to do sort of that full, an irrigation that's fully automated. So that's me really quickly kind of saying, yes, there's definitely things we can do if we have better information about the type of, I guess the information, if we have information about the amount of soil that's in the moisture, or the amount of water that's available from an irrigation sense, and also, I guess, the, refining irrigation. So we're continuing to try and get that as tight as possible in terms of maximizing that water efficiency. So perhaps maybe, Anna, to help this, what I'll do is there's probably some core documents. So Cotton Info has some kind of, there's a production manual, for example, that just talks about cotton growing, and that might be a good, and then that's got links to resources. I'll send that to you to circulate, if that's okay, and that can kind of perhaps, again, help answer some questions where I haven't gone into enough detail. And then if there's follow-up questions, I'm happy to help with that. Sorry, so that's a really long answer to probably what essentially is, yes, there are things you can do to manage water.
Thank you, Susan. And yes, it would be great to share the links. I will circulate among the teams. Okay, who would like to go next? Yeah, I can see actual hands up. Yep, Megan, go for it.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much, Susan. You answered some of my questions in advance. In terms of, you mentioned about clay. I'm wondering if the current technologies you're using, for example, to get soil moisture content, are they compatible with the specific, for example, clay? Because the different type of soils need different type of technology, or at least they should be calibrated. And if the answer is no, have you seen any challenges in terms of the information is not reliable, or across season, you see lots of changes, you cannot rely on the information. My other actually, and this is part of this question, are you using a drone for data collection in large scale farms, or you use it, you do it manually?
Okay. Lots. So let me unpack that. So soil moisture, how do we do soil moisture? So mostly people, so there's a lot of use of, I guess, soil probes, so capacitance probes or whatever, but basically soil moisture probes are probably, are very common. A lot of people use them in a go field system. So that's the Goanna system, where they have a canopy temperature sensor and a soil probe. So that's kind of in the rain grown system. Sorry, I said dry land. It's our way of saying it's dry land. So there's not necessarily the sort of people using kind of technology as much in terms of soil probes and those sorts of things, probably because there's less you can do about it. So that's so that's mostly it's soil probes is the answer. The other question was around what's the kind of like the technology use? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah, like especially in cotton farms, dealing with large scale farms, you're using a drone, for example, for data collection, or you use you do it manually?
Yeah, so
labor intensive.
There's lots of so CRDC is currently we're currently working through a process where I guess CRDC is leading, and we're kind of working with all our cotton industry friends on a data platform that will, I guess, take in a lot of the industry's data into one place, so that growers can kind of have a better control of what they do. So what I would say, I always joke that cotton's kind of got a series of monopolies. We've got one trait provider, so Bayer provide our trait. We've got one seed supplier, Cottonseed Distributors. There's a big reliance on John Deere pickers, kind of at the other end. There's a couple of other systems. I've got questions for Lachlan about how his system might interact with my John Deere. But so we've got kind of a point there, and then obviously all cotton goes through a gin. So there's a limited number of gins, and obviously that gives us the yield information. And then there's only two classing companies. So essentially we've got all these points where data is being generated, and there's value for the supply chain to have those connected. So we're currently working through that as a process. In terms of crop monitoring, that's where it gets a bit tricky. So talking about like cotton's like a little tree crop. So things like monitoring, so nitrogen, for example, is a bit problematic to do like from overhead from a drone. So there's little bits of people using drones for different things, but I wouldn't say I've been overwhelmed by that. Like, so what I would say is cotton growers, if the technology works and it makes a difference, they will invest. And we've seen that, like, there's some technologies that just, like Australia was the fastest adopter of the John Deere round bale pickers because it solved a problem for them. So they just went with it. We see that sort of with some of the tech. So, but drones haven't I think drones got some challenges around the operation. So, you know, do you need to get a contractor in to do it? You know, I think there's been some challenges. So in terms of crop monitoring, there's the canopy temperature sensors. I'm gonna have to pause for a moment while I think. Mostly, most people are just paying a crop agronomist. So you basically pay your crop agronomist to go out 2 to 3 times a week, and they're looking, you know, obviously bug checking, looking at what insects might be a problem, looking for diseases and those sorts of things, and doing some plant monitoring. So mapping of the how you know, retention, how the crop's flowering, performing, doing heights, nodes, those sorts of things. But by and large, we're not overwhelmed with kind of sensor opportunities outside of, I guess, irrigation ag tech. I said I'll have to think. I'm sure I'll think of some things that are out there, but that's probably, yeah.
Thank you
So
so
I don't know
much.
if I answered your question, but that was some talking.
Perfect. And I know why some of the current technologies are not working, but it was great you mentioned them also around the nitrogen and thank you so much.
Nitrogen's problematic. So cotton can take, like, it's just cotton can take up more nitrogen than it needs. It can move nitrogen between the leaves. I was talking to a researcher the other day. He's like, oh, you know, who would do nitrogen research? This is the worst. Like, cotton just does annoying, challenging things. It's very adaptable, but it makes it exciting to do research on, because there's always research questions.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, JD?
Hi, Susan, Nick. I do have a question, and even I talked with Nick last week. I just thinking about that is I need to introduce the whole supply chain. The proposal we are working on is not only using the waste to grow the mushroom to generate the extra value, but also is I think the cotton gene trash waste is a very good material for us to developing some fungi, biocontrol fungi nematicide. So to control some nematodes, because currently, Susan, know I'm doing the voluntary biosecurity nematode project. We do have the nematode pest for cotton industry. So that's something we prepare advance to have some local sourced material, or even like initial stage could be some organic amendments, biofertilizer is sourced from the cotton gene waste to for the growers to use a good material to like the amendments to keep the moisture, and because cotton waste is could knock the moisture better than other agricultural waste. So if like this type of idea, do you think the CRDC would be interested to funding us for some other potential projects?
Nick, do you want to have a turn at talking?
Yeah, I think on this one, the biggest thing is to understand the economics up front, because particularly the gins, I guess the technology you're competing with is biochar now. So if they're looking at biochar, if they're looking at energy collection, then they are starting to create value from their waste. So it goes less from being what's currently waste and, you know, might have at one point paid you to take away, to now it's got a value, and so you're going to have to pay to get access to that waste. Or if you want the gin to license your technology and for them to do it, then it has to outcompete biochar and energy production from an economic perspective. So if that works, and if the economics stack up that it's more advantageous, then certainly it's a great option for gins to be looking at. But there's kind of, like, I think, the insect protein space has seen the same thing, where they made the assumption of this is going to be something we're going to be paid to take away because it's waste. Everyone pays to get rid of waste, but that's not the long-term case. In that all of a sudden they've created a commodity out of waste, out of food waste, which is then they're having to pay to get access to it. So yeah, I think if those are the questions that I'd be asking up front before funding anything. So if it can't outcompete the existing easy technologies that they're looking at around biochar, then it would be a bit hard to see uptake.
Oh, so they are going to develop into biochar, use the waste.
Yeah, that's kind of the current avenue that they're looking at going down, and getting that energy collection. But then and I think I know they're not stuck to that though. So there's a lot of avenues that they can otherwise go down, and there's plenty of waste available. I think it was 250,000 tonnes a year of gin trash. So there's a lot out there. And it's just, you'd have to you'd be competing for access to that resource. So you've got to be able to make sure that the economics stack up, that you can pay enough for it, or that there's enough money made out of your process to make it more valuable for them to give it to you than to go to biochar.
Okay, thanks for this update. Yeah.
Cool.
I can see Ben, you're also online. Would you like to follow up?
Yeah, I do have a follow-up question on that. Would you know how much would they be paying to turn their waste into biochar? Because we do have a number that we like, the highest amount that we could pay farmer for their waste, and we wanted to know whether we compete with that or not.
I don't know how much it's costing them to do the biochar transformation. I don't know whether they know that either yet. I do know that there's a good energy collection perspective, so they're able to, say, from the biochar, run their whole plant and have access to feedback to the grid. They're collecting a fair bit of energy from the biochar.
Yeah.
In terms of, I guess the other side that's outside, in addition to the gin waste, is all your on-farm waste. And so, Susan, you might just explain what happens at the end of a season with the plants.
Yeah, and I was just going to pick up on a point. I was like, I'm terrible for interrupting people, so I was sitting quietly as I ever have. You kind of said for the grower. So certainly growers can choose in their contracts around, obviously they can, who they sell their lint to. So the lint component, there's a seed component, so they can again retain seed, or do a ginning for seed contract where the gin retains the seed. To my knowledge, and I've actually never pulled up a contract to look at it, I would assume that the gin trash is actually owned by the ginning companies. So if you're thinking about who to partner with, if you're talking about ginning trash, it's not necessarily growers. It might be there's some growers who own their own gins. They're the big guys, some of the big, even family farms. Some of them there's a couple that have a gin. But there's also, the more corporates have. So who owns the gin trash is probably something to think about, because that's a little bit of who you're looking to partner with. So in terms of the end of the crop, so obviously carbon is really important for soils. So we all know that's kind of, so in terms of, growing crops, you're not necessarily going to want to take carbon away, but it's sort of think of, I guess at the end of the season, oh, look, here's some I've got behind me. You've got kind of a woody plant. So as that picker comes through, the bulk of the lints come away, and you've got stem material and leaves and those sorts of things. And that's standing, I guess, cotton stubble. is, I guess is there. Like mostly now that's depending on, you've got to do some sort of crop destruction as part of your rules around a GM crop. So mostly that's root cut and kind of mulched in. But obviously there is a quantity of organic material sitting on the farm that, had higher values. People might be open to discussing this. Certainly it's a very woody kind of material.
Yep, that actually worked perfect for us as well, because we use any part of the plants to make our biomaterial. And I think I forgot to mention this earlier, but like we turn it into like a bioform kind of thing for utilization in packaging and also interior products.
Yep.
I guess there's two elements to why it stays on farm. One is the carbon element, then there'd be a value element. There's not enough value to ship it anywhere at the moment.
Yeah.
So if we can create enough value to take it off farm, then it's up to a farmer, and they might go every second season, I'll ship it out because I don't need that. There's not enough value to the carbon every season. So might be certain parts of the property that that they can ship that off, and there'd be large volumes compared to the gin waste. Which if that's already at 250,000 tonnes, you'd be talking significant volumes. On farm.
It'd have to be like, there'd have to be efficiencies and those sorts of things with farming operations, but it's not great stubble. Like a lot of people will grow cover crops or probably more often, a cereal or something post cotton so that they can actually get some cover on the ground. So it's got a carbon value, but ultimately if you could find a higher value and then that could pay for your planting of a cover crop, that's probably going to be win-win. So there's sort of some ways you could think about it working in a farming system, but it'd add some complexity, and sometimes adding complexity, also is something you have to work through.
Do you know how is there a directory of cotton farmer that we can get access to through the CRDC?
No, but if I'm happy to have a conversation. So we won't hand over growers' details. Like here's everyone we know, because that's they will not give me their phone number in the future if I did that. But I'm happy to have a conversation about the type of people you want, or if you want a certain number. I'm happy if you send me a follow-up email and we can have a chat about what you're looking for and what that might look like, and kind of can help you make those connections. And I can just check with them, is it okay if I hand on my on your details, and kind of maybe make that introduction, which might make things smoother. So happy to provide that as a thing.
Yep, no, that sounds great to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Van. Sorry, JD. Lachlan, do you have a question? So I just want to go around the table, and then no also problem. I can see Drew joining, so you'll be next. Yep.
Cool.
Lachlan.
So my question's kind of in the general farming landscape, and you guys mentioned already that John Deere has all of the competition for cotton pickers and the farming stuff, which is interesting. But in terms of cotton, do you know how big a typical farm will run their cotton? Like how many hectares? And if they typically specialized in cotton, like they run cotton every single year, or if they tend to cycle them in with other crops? And I guess how many cotton pickers does each farm owns, that sort of thing as well? Are they keeping it in with all the other machineries, or do they tend to do predominantly cotton?
Great questions. Areas of is not my special. That's that's a numbers thing that I can Google and tell you later. Look, and I suppose maybe is a general way of answering size of farm. So we've got like your typical, emeralds are one of the original sort of, one of those scheme areas where you've got like a Fairbairn Dams here, and the government, back in the Brigalow clearing days, set up farms of all of a set size, and there's certainly family farms that are of those sorts. So we've got kind of, typical farm size, smaller family farm type sizes, and then we've got right through to kind of, I guess, some big corporates who have some quite large holdings, and kind of mixes in between. Like I said, we've got family farms who look like large corporates as well. So there's quite the scale of farming operations. In terms of pickers, machinery stuff, I I don't pay as much attention to, but I can find some people for you to talk to. Again, it's a bit of a mix. So we saw the move to the round bale, so kind of case got kind of taken out because what they had wasn't quite as good.
Right.
And essentially it was a labour problem. So the lack of labour has driven the change with the pickers. Honestly, it's driven the move to in changing irrigation systems. You can't get people to throw siphons anymore, so they've moved to the bankless systems and those sorts of things. So that's been a big driver of change. So there's still a couple of the old pickers out there, but by and large, there's a lot of people using the John Deere round bale pickers. So it's a bit of a mix. So there's a bit of a mix of people. So there's obviously contractors as well. And so in some regions, like I was talking to someone from sort of the Lachlan area, and they're a bit worried that I think they've got one picker locally and they're relying on contractors to come through, and the contractors sort of drive past them and keep heading south. So there's a sort of a fair reliance on contract pickers. They're quite specialized. Pickers aren't cheap. I think when they originally came out, they were $1 million. So gosh, only knows what they cost now. It's probably similar to a header. I don't know what a header costs either. They're a big ticket item that you use for a short period of time. So that's why you see a lot of people, even those who have them on farm, also then sort of turn to contracting as well. I haven't answered your question, so that was really cunning of me.
That you gave a lot more information. I didn't even think of a lot of that stuff. That was great because so contractors come in and they handle a lot of the work. So it's hard for farmers to just run cotton specialized for their own farm. They kind of have a section, and then they outsource some of the So if
we're talking about the cotton farming system, every cotton grower will be a grain grower, because if they're not, there's one region where I'm like, oh, they grow way too much back-to-back cotton. So it's actually not best practice to grow cotton back-to-back. It's the same as like, I was going to say chickpeas, but you're also trying to think of Perth to be like, but any crop, like basically any farming system, growing the same thing over and over again is a surefire way to have disease and weeds and pest problems. It's really not a good idea. So kind of for the bulk of the industry, a typical, like this is big statements about typical, but typically what you're expecting is you're going to have a cotton crop in the summer. You're then going to, if you're lucky and you've had like stars aligned, you're trying to get a cereal crop in straight after that, because I've talked about that cover. If all going well, you've got a cereal crop in straight after that, and then you're going to summer fallow that next summer, and then you're going to come around to cotton, so you're going to, so you can do 2 cotton crops in an irrigation system, sort of a 2 cottons and then a cereal rotation. But it's very dependent on water availability, so whether that's allocation or dry land, because obviously if you haven't got the water, you're not doing that. To cotton, so I don't know. You can move corn systems. It's probably not that different to corn in terms of the amount of irrigation water it uses, how it fits in the system, but it's very much a systems thing. They're all grain growers, but they do tend to, because it's got some specialized gear, and it's probably a little bit more intensive than some of your cereal crops. So it does, a lot of people are cotton, they think of themselves as cotton growers. They're growing, it's their cash crop. That's probably the best. It's a pillar crop. It's probably a nicer way to say it. It's their pillar crop. And then they're building their system around it. So everything else complements the cotton. They make their money off the cotton, but they're obviously growing other profitable crops in amongst that. But cotton's their pillar crop. Does that help?
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. And also that a lot of farms rely on contractors for it is quite interesting, because the machinery is a bit more specialized. So rather than keeping all of it on hand, they rely on the people who are traveling around and about. Yeah.
So there's often, so for some of the bigger guys, they'll have a mix. So they'll have their own gear. So this is particularly picking gear I'm referring to. They'll have their own picking equipment, but they might, but that might not be enough to efficiently, like to quickly do their whole farm. So they'll have contractors, but they'll have enough to get by if the contractor didn't show up. And then obviously they've got their other kind of tractors and those things. Deere just has, I think, because the industry grew from a US base. We talk, I've just recently, they still talk acres, they still wear caps, like we've got that US connections a bit deeper than, and so there's a couple of guys. One guy I know, side tangent. He paints his gear the same green so that his whole farm, like his shed, looks really tidy because everything's the same color
It's all
green.
color matched. Yeah.
So they're not all like that, but I'm like, there's a few. There's a lean. But certainly, you know, they've got their other equipment. There's some other sort of, you know, things like your root cutters and those. There's a few things that are a little bit cotton specialized, but basically it's row cropping equipment. So like I said, corns are similar. If you're growing corn, that's probably a similar kind of, everything else is a bit similar, but yeah, it's the pickers are a bit specialized.
Cool. Thank you. That was very useful.
And just to kind of put ideas out there, if your system interacts with contractors, thinking about how that might help a region.
Yeah, contractors, that they're one of our biggest target customers because they're always going to new farms and new areas that they haven't worked before. And it doesn't need to integrate with any of the like farmers' previous systems. So it's like, it's just on your phone. So it's hardware agnostic. So they can rock up with a phone as long as the farmer gives them all of the files, like the farming paddock files to get around, then they find the most use out of it. So being heavy, like cotton being slightly more contractor reliant industry, means it's more useful for us as well.
Yeah, the other contracting group, so spray contractors is the other group. And I don't know if your system interacts with spray contracting, but there's still some in the irrigation. There's sort of aerial operators, but usually most farms have need for a ground rig.
Wonderful. And I can see Drew joined as well. Drew, if you can make a quick intro and then maybe give one question you'd like to share. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Drew Reski. I've got a anti-counterfeit smart code which prevents counterfeits on export products. I've also got a soil carbon company, so I worked with 6 other partners on that, in which we have verified soil carbon with 4.5 million on-ground calibrations. So it's the most accurate in the world. So Susan, one of the issues you see in places like Cubby is huge above ground masses of water. And it's less a question than but have you looked at lily pads at all? Which sounds, you know what I'm talking about here? Yeah. So
let's not pick on Cubby. So Cubby's actually it's a large operation, but I'm like,
I meant just
that region.
No, shallow.
I always feel bad for Cubby that they get called out, and I'm like, you know, they've got neighbours. So look, one of, I guess, the, you know, why is cotton where it is something kind of cotton is a high value use for medium security water. So you shouldn't, maybe, that's probably a statement I should make. It's planting tree crops and high value crops into areas which have unreliable water is problematic, because obviously if you need water every year and you go into a drought, that's a problem. So obviously cotton's got its as an annual crop can kind of work to what's available. So that's kind of why we've ended up with this system of, you know, large scale irrigation areas kind of, you know, using the ephemeral water when it's available, and you know, that's why kind of cotton is often the preferred crop of choice, is high value use for medium security water. But evaporation is our biggest water loss. I'm sure I've got a graph here somewhere, but essentially we have, you know, driven huge kind of efficiencies in terms of field irrigation. Like we've kind of, you know, like I said, they're down to the sensors and the automations and all of the things, and even how they manage on farm has kind of improved water. So we're seeing less losses in the system in thing, but evaporation, hands down, one of the biggest losses that we have, and water's worth a lot of money. Not just like, that's just not a cotton thing, that's an irrigator kind of comment, but you know, so what have we looked at? So we've got some investments at the moment that are looking at different, you know, ways of how we could address evaporation. It's a kind of a global problem. Like, I don't know if anyone saw, it was in California that had all those ball things in there. We looked at them. So have we looked at lily pads? We've looked at, so there's some probably even to the point where it's not research, but it's probably more kind of commercial things happening at the moment around solar and reducing evaporation. I'm not aware of anyone that's looked at kind of a lily pad type, as in a plant. You're talking about just plants.
Yeah, so planting lily pads decreases. So with wind, it increases the surface area by 3 times. By putting lily pads in, it reduces your evaporation from increasing of surface area by 200%, they say. But then obviously having the lily pad itself there cools the water and prevents the evaporation from happening second time. And thirdly, that if that does go dry for 3 years and then water comes back into it, they actually stay dormant and pop out. And we've seen that here. We've got a local area that goes completely dry, and then in the middle of winter, it's got lily pads, yay big. So it's just a very, and they do just breed, obviously. So they'll go out as far as they physically can, as far as how deep that water is. But that's why I mentioned the shallowness, because it gives availability of lily pads to go across that whole water and only improves the quality of it.
Yeah, so in terms of I guess improving efficiencies around storages, and I know probably there's this review someone did recently on evaporation and those sorts of things. So the recommendation is usually to have it deep, because that because you get less surface area, more of the water's at depth, so it kind of reduces your evaporation that way. So I'm not sure if that would.
It's not. You've got a great dam at Emerald, I know. I've been to it, but that depth is not always available in the flattest continent in the world. So so you're looking at those things. I mean, it's such a cheap and easy way to plant them and have them actually grow themselves.
Yeah, look, I will raise that with, so like, I guess that area of like, that's not my, I'll raise that with my, someone in my team who's more in that kind of, riverine environment type work. I'm not sure if it's been looked at. I'm thinking, so if anything, I've probably come across more the problems we have in our waterways. That's probably something I probably am more aware of. I'm not aware of people kind of proactively planting. We've probably got, so there may be an opportunity there that's to be looked at. Cool. Yeah. So no, I'm not aware of anything. I wonder why we haven't. I do wonder if it's a depth or a climate thing, but I don't know. It might be a locking of equipment thing. So you've got.
Well, they should. Oh, well, yeah.
But I don't like it. I guess I'm saying I don't know why it's not being done. But I'll ask some questions.
Thank you, Drew. I'm conscious we only have 3 minutes left. I have a question for Susan and Nick, more around as innovation brokers. Would you explain what that means, and also how do you work with startups? If that's good way to close it up. Thanks.
You go, Susan.
Sorry, I always give them a hard time. Don't love the name innovation broker. So we used to be R&D managers, and I was like, oh, I got that. I think what it reflects is that increasingly, just doing traditional research isn't how we do things anymore, and I think that probably reflects that much more openness around who we work with and how we come at problems and solutions and those sorts of things. What was the question? How would we work with startups? So we've certainly I have in different ways. So taking often if it's a kind of a, like, if there's a sort of a general research question like that, that might be considered as part of a research call. We have always been open to, like, just I guess we're only a small RDC. That's probably the one thing, I guess, to manage expectations, compared to, say, someone like GRDC. I always joke we're like their poor cousin. So it probably means that we're small and agile, is how I like to think of it. So we've had partnerships with commercial companies before, quite often. And so I guess the sticking point comes around whether it's industry good type research, which we would just sort of do, I guess, quite like as a normal research project, If there's commercial returns to be made, we will often have that discussion around equity. So it's not necessarily about IP ownership, where we're kind of, I guess, flexible in terms of those things. But you know, in terms of you know, equity, if there was a solution that was sort of developed as part of one of our research projects that delivered benefit beyond the Australian cotton industry particularly. So obviously, you know, it's one thing if it delivers returns to Australian cotton growers, but obviously if it delivers returns to, say, US cotton growers or Brazil cotton growers, that's great, because ultimately cotton's competing with man-made fibres, not, you know, we're competing with other countries, but ultimately it's man-made fibres. So cotton doing well kind of does well for everyone. But we would want to see returns from you know, that kind of, you know, so that's why we'll take an equity position, because you know, that's so I guess that's kind of a little bit of the principle is that, you know, we're open to discussions if it's you know, a solution that solves a particular problem, like, you know, is just demonstrating that something will work in the cotton industry and solves a particular problem for us. We might be, you know, open to how an investment might look. I guess the other way we work with startups, and why I guess I've been so keen on this process, is so I guess cotton industry is quite small, quite connected. We might not be able to co-invest, but we might be able to help you link into the industry to so that, you know, we can, I guess part of the innovation broking isn't necessarily about a CRDC project. It might be about making a connection where we've been able to facilitate something that makes an impact for the industry. So if a problem can, you know, solve, you know, an issue for growers and make them more profitable, well, that's kind of, we've done our job. So yeah, so that's again why, like, certainly if you've got a interest in, you know, connections and those sorts of things. So as I guess CRDC, we've got our extension team. So Cotton Info is I guess CRDC, sorry, the cotton industry's extension mechanism. So it might be about linking you with the extension team, and, you know, that might, you know, provide some opportunities, or it might be with a grower, or it might be with some, you know, commercial operators, you know, contractors, for example, you know, that might be, so it might be just about connecting with the groups depending on what the opportunity is.
Yeah. I'll just
add,
if there's a co-investment, it makes it a bit easier as well. So if you're coming with, whether it's from you or from another third party, co-investment makes it easier for us to leverage and to be able to support something versus 100% us paying for it.
Absolutely, Nick. Good point.
Awesome. And Susan and Nick, if you don't mind, would you mind to share your maybe email and contact details where the innovator can reach out for some of the introductions and connection you just mentioned during this call? Yeah.
Yep, that would be fine. I'll drop them in the chat.
That's
Nick's quicker than me. I have to.
Wonderful. And yeah, Susan, as you mentioned, if you could share some of the information you said it would be good for Beck, I'll pass it on. Or if there's other informations, I think one information I was particularly interested is you mentioned you do have information around growers' margins and like in some of the business case of it. If you could share that with me, I will pass it on to this group as well.
Yeah, no worries. Do you want me to drop it in the chat or?
Yeah, put it in the chat. Yeah, that'll be fine.
Yeah, no worries.
I can circulate afterwards, no problem.
Yeah, no worries. I will drop those in now and then you can circulate them.
Yeah, sounds good. So that's it for today. Thank you, everyone. I hope you get part of your question answered and good to listen to other people's questions. And thank you again for Susan and Nick for your time and yeah, helping to connect us with the industry. And thank you, Susan, for all the one-on-ones. Like I've learned a lot already just to understand the industry itself.
Yeah, no worries. So the document I've put in, so the Cotton Info, as I said, Cotton Info is our extension arm. So there's a lot of, I guess, publicly available information on the cotton industry. If you're interested in sustainability, if that's part of the metrics you're looking at, all our sustainability information, there's sort of there's kind of a database for that. So I will also drop that in the chat, but that production manual is probably a good first place to give you just the context to the different parts of the industry. But if you go through that Cotton Info website, that's got a lot of grower facing information. And so that will, that's got things like the gross margins, but I'll pop the gross margins link in the thing as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So that's
Cheers,
it.
guys.
Bye for now. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.